You wanted to play silence? I'll play disappearance.
I came home early last Tuesday and accidentally discovered my wife was planning to completely ignore me for 7 days straight. Not because we'd argued or had problems, but because her work friends convinced her it'd be some kind of empowerment exercise to see how desperate I'd become for her attention. I'd gotten back from running some errands and came through the garage entrance around 6 in the evening. That's when I heard Sarah's voice coming from the dining room. She was on speaker with her 3 colleagues from work, Michelle, Karen, and Beth. These same women had been filling her head with questionable relationship tactics for the past few months. I stopped just out of sight in the hallway, close enough to hear their entire conversation but hidden from view. "Listen, Sarah, you're way too available," Michelle was saying with absolute confidence. "Guys don't appreciate what comes easy to them. It's basic psychology." Karen jumped in next with enthusiasm. "Exactly right. My boyfriend was totally taking me for granted until I did the silent treatment for 3 days straight. Now he practically worships the ground I walk on. He sends me good morning texts, asks about my day, plans dates. It completely changed the dynamic." Sarah's voice sounded uncertain, which gave me a tiny bit of hope. "I don't know, ladies. David and I communicate pretty well normally. This feels kind of dishonest to me. Like playing games." Beth responded immediately with conviction. "It's not dishonest, it's strategic. You're showing him you're the prize, not just always available whenever he wants. My therapist even calls it creating necessary space for healthy boundaries." Michelle continued laying out the plan in detail. "Here's exactly what you need to do. Starting this weekend, go completely silent on him for 7 full days. Don't respond to texts, don't return calls, barely talk at home when you're together. Just act busy and unavailable. Make him wonder what's going on." Sarah hesitated again. "An entire week? That seems really extreme to me." Karen reassured her with a story. "Trust us on this. My cousin tried it with her fiancé last year. By the 3rd day, he sent flowers to her office. By day 5, he'd booked a romantic weekend trip to the mountains. By day 7, he'd upgraded her engagement ring. She said it was the best thing she ever did for their relationship." I felt my jaw clench as I gripped the wall to steady myself. My pulse was racing in my ears. Beth added with excitement, "Make sure you document how he reacts too. Take notes, maybe some photos. I want to see how fast he starts panicking and trying to figure out what's wrong." Karen instructed in her most authoritative voice, "The key is not breaking first under any circumstances. When he asks what's wrong, just say work is stressful and you have a lot going on. Keep it vague and mysterious. The uncertainty will make him value you more and realize what he could lose." Sarah asked the question I was dreading to hear answered. "What if he doesn't even react, though? What if he just goes about his normal routine and doesn't seem bothered?" Michelle actually laughed at that possibility. "Then you'll know he doesn't really value what you have, and you can make informed decisions based on that reality. But honestly, no husband lets his wife completely ignore him for a full week without trying to figure out what the problem is." Karen added with conviction, "Think of it as a test of the relationship. If he loves you, he'll fight for your attention and try to win you back. If he doesn't, well, better to find out now before you waste more years." I heard Sarah sigh heavily and my heart sank. I guess it makes sense when you put it that way. I have been feeling like maybe he's taking me for granted lately, like we've gotten too comfortable in our routine and there's no excitement anymore. Beth encouraged her enthusiastically. "There you go. That's the spirit. Comfortable equals complacent in relationships. Shake things up, establish your value and importance, and watch him remember why he married you in the first place." Michelle wrapped it up with final instructions. "Start this weekend then. We'll check in with you daily to see how it's progressing and give you support. This is going to be so empowering for you, Sarah. You'll feel like a completely different woman by the end of it." I'd heard enough at that point. These women weren't just giving my wife terrible advice. They were actively encouraging her to psychologically manipulate me for an entire week, to test me like some kind of laboratory experiment, to treat our 6-year marriage like a social experiment for their entertainment and gossip. But what really turned my stomach wasn't just the advice itself. It was hearing Sarah actually considering it seriously, getting excited about it even. The woman I'd been married to for 6 years, who I'd been completely honest and faithful to every single day, was planning to ignore me for a full week to establish dominance over me. Part of me wanted to walk into that room immediately and confront all of them face to face. Tell those manipulative women exactly what I thought of their games and twisted relationship advice. Tell Sarah directly that I deserved better than this kind of treatment. But something made me stop and think more strategically. A cold, calculated thought formed in my mind as I stood there listening. If Sarah wanted to test me by ghosting me for a week, she was about to learn something very important about her husband. I don't beg for anyone's attention. I don't chase people who ignore me. And I absolutely don't play games with someone who treats me like a lab experiment to entertain her coworkers. She wanted to ghost me? Fine. I'd ghost the entire marriage. I quietly backed out of the hallway, moving as silently as possible, and left through the garage the same way I'd entered. I got in my car and drove to a nearby park where I sat by the lake, staring at the water and started planning my next moves carefully. I had 1 week. 7 days while Sarah played her little manipulation game. 7 days to prepare for the exact moment she'd come home expecting to find me desperate for her attention, ready to beg for her forgiveness. Instead, she'd find an empty closet, a separated bank account, and divorce papers. I pulled out my phone and started making a detailed list in my notes app. Secure finances and transfer my half. Find a place to live immediately. Pack systematically without her noticing. Consult an attorney about legal separation. Document everything with receipts and photos. Leave no confusion about why I was leaving. This wasn't revenge or spite. This was self-respect and setting boundaries. When someone shows you they're willing to manipulate you for entertainment, you believe them the first time and act accordingly. About an hour later, after my head cleared, I returned home. Sarah's call had ended by then. She was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself with a slight smile on her face. She clearly felt empowered and confident by her conversation with the toxic trio. "Hey, honey," she said cheerfully when I walked in, even kissing my cheek with affection. That kiss, I now understood with painful clarity, would be one of the last genuine displays of affection I'd receive for a week. "Store was out of the paint primer I needed," I said as calmly as possible. "I'll pick it up this weekend instead." She nodded absently, already mentally preparing for her week-long performance ahead. That night, as we lay in bed, I studied her profile in the darkness, watching her breathe. Sarah seemed excited, almost energized by what was coming. She had absolutely no idea what she was about to set in motion. Tomorrow was Friday. She'd start her ghosting campaign this weekend, which meant by next Friday, day 7 of her experiment, I needed to be completely moved out and financially separated from her. Friday evening arrived right on schedule, and so did Sarah's performance as planned. I came home from work to find her in the living room with her phone in hand, deliberately not looking up when I entered through the front door. "Hey," I said as casually as I could manage. "How was your day at work?" She glanced up briefly with a cool, distant expression I'd never seen before. "Busy. Lot going on with work projects and deadlines." Then immediately back to her phone screen, dismissing me. "Want to order takeout for dinner, or should I cook something?" I asked, testing the waters. "Whatever you want. I'm not really hungry anyway." Still not looking at me, scrolling through her phone. Day 1 had officially begun according to her plan. I nodded slowly and went to the kitchen. I made dinner for both of us anyway, chicken and vegetables. When I brought her a plate to the living room, she barely acknowledged it with a muttered thanks before carrying it to the home office and closing the door firmly behind her. So this is how it starts, I thought to myself. The ghosting experiment. The test to see if I'll panic, beg for her attention, ask what's wrong 100 times like an insecure teenager. Wrong husband for that, Sarah. While she sat in that office thinking she was establishing dominance, I was in the kitchen calmly looking at rental apartments on my phone. I'd already contacted an attorney that afternoon during my lunch break. I had already opened a separate bank account at a different bank. Saturday morning, Sarah made a show of being busy around the house. She moved from room to room with her laptop, wore earbuds constantly, generally made herself unavailable. I announced I was going out for a few hours. She barely nodded. I spent the day executing my plan. First stop was the bank. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings into my new individual account. Left her half completely untouched, documented everything with screenshots and receipts. Second stop was an attorney's office. We discussed legal separation and asset division. I got the paperwork started. Timeline was straightforward. Everything could be ready by next Friday. Third stop was viewing a short-term rental apartment, a furnished one-bedroom with a month-to-month lease available immediately. I signed the lease and got the keys. Move in ready by Thursday. Fourth stop was securing a storage unit. I'd use it to stage items before moving them to the new apartment. Another paper trail documenting my intentions. By the time I returned home Saturday evening, Sarah was in the bedroom with the door closed, clearly on a video call with her coworkers. I could hear their laughter through the door. They were probably celebrating how well her ghosting was going, checking in like they'd promised, probably asking if I'd cracked yet. If they only knew. Sunday was more of the same. Sarah had perfected her distant act. Short answers, no eye contact, always occupied with something. At one point, I walked past her in the living room. "Morning," I said pleasantly. She glanced up from her phone, gave me a tight smile, and said nothing before looking back down. The old me might have asked what was wrong, might have tried to start a conversation, might have worked harder to get her attention. This version of me just nodded and went about my day. I spent Sunday systematically going through the house, mentally cataloging what was mine, what was hers, what we'd purchased together. I started a detailed spreadsheet on my laptop, color-coding everything. That evening, while Sarah was taking a deliberately long bath with the door locked, I began packing. Not frantically. Systematically. I started with things she wouldn't notice immediately. Off-season clothes from the back of the closet, books from the lower shelves, tools from the garage she never used, important documents from my file drawer, my grandfather's watch, and other sentimental items. I packed 2 large boxes and loaded them into my car after Sarah had gone to sleep. First load delivered to the storage unit. 4 more days, then she'd understand exactly what her little test had cost her. Monday and Tuesday followed the same pattern. Sarah's ghosting was in full effect. She'd leave for work early without saying goodbye. She'd come home and go straight to the bedroom or home office. Minimal words, maximum distance. Her coworkers were clearly checking in daily. I could hear snippets when she'd be on speaker in the office. Is he freaking out yet? Stay strong, girl. You're doing amazing. What they couldn't see was me making my second and third trips to the storage unit. More clothes, kitchen items I'd brought into the marriage, my electronics, my sports equipment, framed photos of my family. By Tuesday evening, my belongings were being systematically removed from the house, and Sarah hadn't noticed a single thing. She was too busy being busy to pay attention to what was actually happening around her. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was ignoring me to test if I'd notice her absence and fight for her attention. Meanwhile, I was removing myself from her life entirely, and she was too absorbed in her performance to notice my absence. Wednesday, I called in sick to work. Sarah had already left before 7 a.m., probably going in early to avoid any morning interaction with me. I had the entire day to execute the final phase. I hired professional movers to take my furniture, the bedroom set for my parents, the desk from my home office, my recliner. I removed my remaining clothes and personal items. I took my half of any shared possessions. We had 2 matching nightstands. I took 1. We had a set of 6 dining chairs. I took 3. I left her belongings completely untouched. In the afternoon, I changed my mailing address to the new apartment, updated insurance policies to individual coverage, closed our joint credit card after confirming with my attorney this was appropriate, removed my name from the utilities, leaving them solely in her name. By Thursday evening, everything was in place. My belongings were either in the new apartment or in storage. My finances were separated. My future living arrangement was secured. All that remained was the letter and my exit. Thursday night, Sarah came home after another long day of ignoring me completely. She went straight to the bedroom with her takeout dinner, closed the door as usual. I heard her on FaceTime with the toxic trio again, laughing and chatting. "Day 7, tomorrow," one of them said excitedly. "Then you can see how desperate he's gotten for you. I bet he's been dying inside all week." I sat in the mostly empty living room, though Sarah hadn't been in there for days to notice the missing furniture, and wrote my letter carefully. It needed to be completely clear, firm, and final. No room for misinterpretation or confusion about my intentions. Friday morning at 5:30 a.m. exactly, I made my final exit from the house. Sarah was still asleep upstairs. She'd been staying up late each night, probably texting enthusiastically with her coworkers about the experiment's success. I placed the envelope on the kitchen counter where she'd definitely see it first thing. Propped against the coffee maker she used religiously every single morning without fail. I took one last look around the house we'd shared for 6 years together. Yesterday, it had felt like a home. Today, it felt like a reminder of what happens when you test someone who knows their worth and has self-respect. I walked out the front door, locked it behind me securely, and left my house key on the porch railing for her to find. By 6 a.m., I was in my new apartment across town, unpacking the last of my boxes and organizing my new space. My phone was turned off completely. My location sharing was disabled on all apps. My social media accounts were deactivated. If Sarah wanted to ghost me for a week, she was about to learn what real ghosting actually looked like. Sarah had planned Friday as her victory day in advance. Day 8, the big reveal. She'd scheduled happy hour with her coworkers after work specifically to celebrate the end of the successful experiment. Then she'd come home and finally acknowledge me again, expecting me to be relieved, grateful, maybe even apologetic for whatever shortcomings I'd been reflecting on all week long. She left work at 5 p.m. feeling giddy with excitement. The week had gone perfectly according to their plan. I hadn't pushed, hadn't pressured, hadn't made her feel guilty at all. I'd given her space exactly like she wanted. Surely I'd learned my lesson about taking her for granted and would be a better husband now. At the bar downtown, Michelle, Karen, and Beth were waiting at a table with drinks already ordered and ready. "Here's to Sarah," Michelle raised her glass high. "You did it, girl. Full week of establishing proper boundaries and showing your value." "How do you feel?" Karen asked with interest. "Empowered," Sarah smiled genuinely. "Actually, yeah, I think this was really good for us as a couple. I think David really respected my need for space and independence." Beth was already recording the moment on her phone for social media. "So what's the plan for tonight? Are you going to make him work for it? Or welcome him back graciously?" "I think I'll let him take me to dinner," Sarah said confidently. "Somewhere nice and romantic. He's probably been thinking all week about how to make things up to me and show me I matter." The women laughed and clinked glasses. Sarah stayed for one drink, then headed home at 6:30 p.m. She was excited, energized, ready to see the results of her power move. She pulled into the driveway at 7 p.m. My car wasn't there, but that wasn't unusual. Maybe I'd run an errand. She walked in through the front door, calling out, "Honey, I'm home," with a playful tone. Silence. She walked into the kitchen to set down her purse and saw the envelope immediately, her name written in my handwriting. Her stomach flipped. This wasn't part of the plan. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter read, "Sarah, I know about the ghosting experiment. I heard your entire conversation with Michelle, Karen, and Beth last Tuesday evening when I came home early. I heard them convince you to ignore me for a week to establish dominance and test my commitment. I heard you agree to treat our marriage like a social experiment for their entertainment. You wanted to ghost me for a week to see if I'd fight for your attention. Instead, I spent the week preparing to fight for my self-respect. By the time you read this, I've moved out completely. I've transferred my half of our joint savings to a separate account. The statements are in this envelope. I've removed my name from the utilities, which are now solely in your name. I've taken only what belonged to me before our marriage and exactly half of what we purchased together. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. The woman I married wouldn't have played mind games to feel powerful. She wouldn't have let her coworkers convince her to manipulate someone she claimed to love. She wouldn't have tested me instead of talking to me. But that woman seems to have been replaced by someone who thinks establishing dominance is more important than establishing honest communication. You wanted to test whether I'd fight for this marriage? Here's your answer. I don't fight for relationships with people who treat me like a psychological experiment. I don't beg for attention from someone who uses their absence as a tool. And I definitely don't participate in games designed by your toxic coworkers who see marriage as a power struggle instead of a partnership. I've contacted an attorney. Paperwork will be forthcoming. In the meantime, I need space. Real space. Not the manipulative kind. To decide whether this marriage is something I want to fight to repair or fight to end. The difference between your ghosting and mine is simple. Yours was a test. Mine is a boundary. You have my attorney's contact information in this envelope. Any communication from this point forward goes through them. David. P.S. You might want to reconsider the quality of advice you're getting from women who have a combined relationship success rate of 0. The letter slipped from her trembling hands as reality crashed over her like a wave. She ran frantically to the bedroom. My side of the closet was completely empty. No clothes, no shoes, nothing. My dresser drawers were empty when she pulled them open. My nightstand was gone entirely from beside the bed. She hadn't even noticed any of it. She ran to the bathroom desperately. My toothbrush, my razor, my shampoo, all gone without a trace. She ran to the garage in a panic. My tools were missing from the pegboard. My camping gear was gone from the shelves. Even my winter tires were removed from storage. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called my number immediately. The number you have reached is no longer in service. She tried texting desperately. Message failed to deliver. She checked Find My Friends app. Location unavailable. She tried Instagram, Facebook, everything frantically. All deactivated completely. I hadn't just left her. I disappeared entirely. I'd ghosted her completely and thoroughly. Then the second realization hit her hard. The bank accounts. She opened her banking app with trembling fingers. The joint savings account that had held $52,000 now showed exactly $26,000. Perfectly half. I'd taken my portion down to the very last penny. The joint checking account showed $2,800, her exact portion of what had been there. I'd left her half of absolutely everything. Fair, legal, complete, and documented. Sarah slid down the bedroom wall slowly, sitting on the floor of the now half-empty room, and the full weight of what she'd done finally crushed her completely. She'd tested her husband's love by ignoring him deliberately, and she'd discovered that I loved myself more than I loved being manipulated by anyone. The next few days were a complete blur of panic for Sarah. She called my best friend Marcus multiple times, begging desperately for my location and contact information. He looked at her with clear disappointment in his eyes. He told me what you did, Sarah. The ghosting thing, the test, all of it in detail. No, I'm not telling you where he is or how to reach him. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. He wants space from you. Real space. Not the kind you were faking all week for your experiment. She called my brother Tyler next in desperation. He actually answered his phone, but wasn't any more helpful or sympathetic. He told me everything that happened. And honestly, I think he's doing exactly the right thing for himself. You don't test people you love, Sarah. You especially don't let your coworkers convince you to treat your husband like a science experiment for their entertainment. That's messed up. She even drove to my attorney's office downtown and tried to walk in to see him. The receptionist stopped her politely but very firmly at the desk. Mr. Morrison has specifically requested no direct contact except through official legal channels. You'll receive documentation in the mail within the next week regarding the separation proceedings. Security actually escorted her out of the building. That Saturday evening, Sarah called Michelle, Karen, and Beth in a conference call. So he's really going through with the separation? Karen asked incredulously. Yes, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Everyone I've talked to says he's completely serious about it. His attorney won't even let me near them or talk to him. His friends won't tell me where he is, and Her voice turned sharp suddenly. This is your fault. You three convinced me this was a good idea. You said it would make him appreciate me. Whoa, hold on, Michelle said defensively. We gave you advice. You chose to follow it. You said it would work. You said he'd appreciate me more. Most men do, Karen jumped in. Your husband just overreacted. Overreacted? Sarah's voice rose. I ignored him for a week to test his commitment. How is leaving an overreaction to being treated like a test subject? Look, Beth said carefully, maybe you just need to give him more time. Men get emotional and do impulsive things. This wasn't impulsive. He planned it all week. While I was playing your stupid game, he was opening bank accounts and hiring attorneys and packing up his entire life. Sarah, you need to calm down, Michelle said in that infuriatingly condescending tone. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months, Sarah shot back. I'm thinking that I destroyed my marriage because I listened to 3 women who don't even have successful relationships giving me advice about mine. Silence. That's not fair, Karen finally said. Isn't it? Michelle, you're divorced. Karen, you and your boyfriend break up every other month. Beth, when was your last relationship that made it past 6 months? And I took marriage advice from you 3. What was I thinking? We were trying to help you feel empowered, Michelle protested. I don't feel empowered. I feel like I manipulated my husband based on your toxic advice. And now I'm losing him. Sarah hung up before they could respond. Wednesday, Sarah received official documents. Petition for legal separation. There was a letter from my attorney outlining 5 conditions for even considering counseling. First, end all friendships with those 3 coworkers completely. Second, write a letter to herself explaining why she thought manipulation was acceptable. Third, wait 30 days before any contact. Fourth, after 30 days, schedule mediation through the attorney. Fifth, understand that counseling doesn't guarantee reconciliation. The letter ended. Mr. Morrison doesn't hate you. he's hurt and needs to protect himself from further manipulation. If you truly love him, respect his boundaries and prove through actions that you've learned. If you do not agree to these terms, divorce proceedings will begin immediately. Sarah read the letter 3 times. 30 days. No contact for 30 days. And even then, no guarantees. But it was a chance. A small one. Conditional and precarious, but a chance. She pulled out her laptop and began typing her letter to herself, examining why she'd let Michelle, Karen, and Beth convince her to manipulate me, acknowledging her insecurities, and recognizing how she'd prioritized fitting in over protecting her relationship. Thursday morning, Sarah requested a meeting with HR. I need to request a department transfer. The 3 women I've been working closely with gave me relationship advice that destroyed my marriage. I need to completely separate myself from their influence if I have any chance of repairing it. By end of day Thursday, Sarah's transfer was approved. She'd completed 2 of my conditions. Now came the hardest part, waiting 30 days without contact while not knowing if her marriage could be saved. The 30 days were the longest of Sarah's life. She moved through her new department quietly, started therapy, avoided Michelle, Karen, and Beth completely. In week 3, Michelle tried to approach her in the parking garage. Sarah kept walking. Michelle shouted, "You're choosing a man over your friends?" Sarah thought, "I'm choosing self-respect over toxic people." On day 30, Sarah called my attorney's office requesting mediation. 7 days later, she sat in my attorney's conference room. She handed over documentation of her department transfer, screenshots showing she'd blocked all 3 coworkers, the letter she'd written, and proof of therapy enrollment. The attorney reviewed everything carefully. "I'll present this to Mr. Morrison. If he agrees, we'll schedule mediation." 7 days after that anxious wait, Sarah sat in Dr. Rachel Martinez's office for mediation, waiting nervously and picking at her fingernails. At 3 p.m. exactly, I walked in through the door. Sarah's breath caught immediately when she saw me. I looked thinner than before, tired and worn out, but my eyes were clear and alert. My expression was guarded but not hostile or angry. We sat in separate chairs with Dr. Martinez positioned between us like a referee. "Thank you both for being here today," Dr. Martinez began professionally. "This session is an opportunity for honest communication in a safe environment. Mr. Morrison, you asked for this mediation to determine if couples counseling might be worthwhile for your marriage. Mrs. Morrison has completed all your conditions as requested. Shall we begin?" I nodded slowly, my eyes finally meeting Sarah's directly for the first time in over a month. "Sarah," Dr. Martinez prompted gently, "would you like to start by addressing what happened and why we're here?" Sarah took a shaking breath, trying to steady herself. "David, I am so deeply sorry for what I did. Not because you left me. That was the consequence I earned and deserved. I'm sorry because I disrespected you fundamentally, manipulated you intentionally, and treated our marriage like a game or experiment. I'm sorry because I let people who don't know you and don't care about us convince me to test whether you loved me enough. That was wrong on every level." I listened carefully without interrupting her at all. Sarah continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "I was insecure, not about you or your love, but about myself and my own worth. I wanted to fit in with my coworkers desperately, and they made our stable, honest relationship sound boring and weak. They made your reliability sound like complacency, and I believed their toxic perspective instead of trusting what we'd built together over 6 years." "Why?" I asked quietly, my first words. "Why did their opinion matter more than 6 years of us being good to each other? Because I've always cared too much about what other people think of me. It's something I'm working on in therapy now. I wanted them to think I was confident and empowered, so I followed their advice, even though every instinct told me it was wrong." The session continued with Dr. Martinez guiding us through difficult questions. Finally, she asked the crucial question. "Mr. Morrison, knowing everything you know now, are you willing to attempt couples counseling with Sarah?" I was quiet for a long time. Sarah held her breath. Finally, I spoke. "Yes, but with conditions. We remain legally separated while we do counseling. Weekly sessions for at least 3 months. If at any point I feel like she's not genuine, or if she makes excuses, or if she contacts those coworkers again, I'm done. No second chance after the second chance." "And if I do everything right?" Sarah asked quietly. "If I prove I've changed?" "Then after 3 months, we reevaluate. Maybe we try living together again. Maybe we renew our vows with a better foundation. Maybe we build something stronger than what we had before." I paused. But maybe isn't a guarantee, Sarah. It's a possibility. Sarah nodded, tears flowing freely now. Possibility is more than I deserve. It's more than most people would give you, I said, not unkindly. But I made vows to you, for better or worse. This is definitely worse. But I'm willing to see if we can work back to better. The next 3 months were about careful rebuilding, weekly sessions, daily check-ins. By week 5, I smiled during a session for the first time. We had coffee together afterward. I miss you, I told her, but I don't miss who you were being when you listened to them. I don't want to be that person ever again, Sarah replied. In month 4 came the real test of her change. Sarah ran into Karen completely by chance at a coffee shop downtown. Karen approached her before Sarah could leave. Sarah, hey, long time no see. Look, I know things got heated between us all, but we were just trying to help you. You know that, right? Sarah felt the old familiar pull to smooth things over, to be liked, to avoid conflict and confrontation. Then she thought of me, of what prioritizing these women's opinions had cost her permanently. No, Karen, you weren't trying to help me at all, Sarah said firmly. You were projecting your own relationship dysfunction onto mine, and I'm not interested in rebuilding that friendship ever. Karen's face hardened defensively. Wow, David's really got you brainwashed now, hasn't he? David didn't brainwash me about anything, Sarah said calmly. He held me accountable for my choices. There's a significant difference between those two things. Sarah picked up her coffee. I hope you figure out someday that relationships aren't supposed to be power struggles. But that's not my problem to solve anymore. She walked away confidently. That night, she told me about the encounter in our regular therapy session. How did it feel? I asked with interest. Hard, but absolutely right, she said, looking at me. I didn't need you there to make that choice for me. I made it because it was the right thing to do for myself. I nodded slowly, clearly moved. That's what I needed to see from you. Month 5 brought our first real date together. Dinner at a nice restaurant downtown that we used to love. At the end of the evening, I kissed her forehead gently. I'm getting there, Sarah. I'm getting back to us. 6 weeks later, after steady progress, I said it first. I still love you. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped feeling safe with you. Sarah's eyes filled with emotion. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you feel safe with me again. I promise you that. 6 months after I'd moved out, I told Dr. Martinez we were ready. I moved back home that Saturday. Sarah had prepared the space simply. My side of the closet, empty and waiting. My favorite coffee stocked. Not performance, just partnership. That evening, we sat on our back deck. I never thought we'd be here, Sarah said quietly. I thought I'd lost you forever. You almost did, I said honestly. If you'd made excuses, if you'd blamed me, if you'd pressured me during those 30 days, I would have filed for divorce. I know, but you didn't. You accepted consequences, made real changes, and gave me the space to process everything without pressure. I took her hand. That's why I'm back. Not because I forgot what happened, but because you showed me you understood it. 1 year later, we hosted a dinner party with our real friends. Marcus raised his glass. A toast to David and Sarah, who proved relationships can be rebuilt with honesty and actual commitment instead of tests. Later, as we cleaned up, I looked at Sarah. You know what the difference is now? Before, I loved you, but was comfortable. Now I love you and appreciate you. I don't take you for granted. You didn't lose me, Sarah said. I lost you and I had to earn you back. Maybe we both learned something. You learned that tests destroy trust. I learned that consequences create clarity. That night in bed, Sarah broke the silence. Do you think we're stronger now? I thought about it. Yes, because we rebuilt our foundation on honesty instead of assumptions, on boundaries instead of blind trust. I'm sorry it took almost losing you to understand. I know. You've shown it every day. I turned to face her. But don't be sorry forever. Be better forever. That's the real apology. Sarah nodded. I will. I promise. I know, I said. Because if you don't, I won't hesitate to leave again. And next time, there won't be the conditions for coming back. It wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. Clear, firm, and completely fair. And Sarah loved me more for having it because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Real love doesn't need tests. It needs trust. And trust is built on consistent action, honest communication, and the strength to walk away from anyone, even your partner, who treats you like you're less valuable than their need for external validation. Some boundaries, once crossed, change everything. But sometimes, if you're willing to do the work, you can change them for the better.